celebrating 17 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Ashley Nickloes, Part 1.
Welcome to Anything is Possible. Great stories about great people whose lives prove possibility. Joining me on the broadcast is Ashley Nickloes, Lieutenant Colonel.
Mom.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. When we were prior to beginning our taping, I mentioned you were Lieutenant Colonel, and you batted it away then, and you're batting it away now. What is it that's in you that makes you go, no, titles aren't the thing?
Well, I think what drives me more than anything is service. When you're serving God or others, it's not about you. A true leader is someone who inspires and empowers. A leader has to set an example sometimes in the front by making sure that you don't ask anyone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. But a true leader is someone who can inspire and empower those around them to do even more than they ever thought possible. And it's not about me and what I'm able to achieve. I've just been extremely blessed in my life. And so when people say titles or whatever, it's people aren't about titles. It's about who you are, not what you've achieved.
Let's talk about your military service first.
Okay.
When did all of this happen for you? Where have you served? How have you served?
Well, on the military side, my father was a commercial airline pilot, and he was also in this Tennessee Air National Guard unit. And my grandfather on my mother's side, he was a B-17, B-29 pilot. He actually lost his life flying a mission over the Pacific in 1945, 2 months before my mother was born. That's an amazing story. You'll have to indulge me on that. He flew 50 missions out of North Africa in a B-17, came home and re-upped to fly the B-29 in the Pacific. And he was flying a mission where halfway through, they knew they wouldn't be able to make it back. They wouldn't have enough fuel if they continued the mission. They decided as a crew to continue because the information they were relaying back was imperative for the follow-on mission, which was Operation Meeting House, which was the first firebombing of Tokyo. They continued, and almost three-quarters of the way back to Saipan, they ran out of fuel and he ditched the aircraft. I've read accounts from 3 of the people who survived, and it's amazing to go through and hear their discussions and what they were facing at the time. My grandfather did not make it out alive. He died and was in the aircraft and went down with the aircraft. But I found out this story about 5 years ago, and I was on a temporary duty for recurrent simulator training. And I had just made aircraft commander at the time, and I was just thinking of my grandfather and the responsibility that was on his shoulders during that mission and what he carried during the entire war, and to end by running out of fuel, and to realize that I fly air refueling tankers, so I get to make sure that people's grandfathers get home, and I get to make sure that the mission is completed. And the fathers get to meet their daughters. Like, my grandfather never got to meet my mother. So, I often say God has a plan. And so many times we don't know what that plan is. You just have to let it happen. And so I'm just truly blessed. When I was growing up, though, my dad, as an airline pilot, people would ask me, Ashley, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was telling this story earlier, and I'd say, oh, I want to work for the airlines. And people would immediately say, oh, you want to be a flight attendant? And I was like, no, I don't want to be a flight attendant. Oh, you want to be a customer service agent? No. Well, Ashley, you don't want to be a baggage person? No, I'm going to be a pilot. Ashley, girls don't do that. And I was like, well, this girl does.
Yeah, that's all you need to hear, right?
So I just always knew I wanted to fly. And the service in our family, my dad told me about the Air National Guard. And I just decided that's where I needed to be. And so I interviewed here at McGee Tyson, was turned down the first time. And they said, we just don't think you can handle the military training. So, of course, I was like, oh, well, we'll see about that. And I actually was hired up in Niagara, New York first. And then Knoxville hired me back down here. So I knew Knoxville was where I wanted to be. So I came home to Knoxville. But it's been an incredible journey, 20 years now. And it just seems like yesterday I started out.
My guest is Lieutenant Colonel Ashley Nickloes. More on Anything is Possible in just a moment.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
That was one of the most inspiring missions that I've ever flown, was when we were bringing wounded back from Afghanistan.
What a tremendous track record the Tennessee Air National Guard has here with our air refueling unit. We're the best in the world.
Oh, well, it's a sleepy little unit. A lot of people in our area don't realize what we do. But air refueling tankers, if you take away gas from the sky, you've pretty much crippled the entire air war. If you don't have domination of the airspace, then your troops aren't safe on the ground. So we make sure that our troops are safe on the ground. They can get their mission done. Our fighters can get their mission done, protecting the troops, bombing what they have to. It's an incredible mission, and we have just an incredible history at McGee Tyson.
Tell me about the aircraft.
Oh, it is the KC-135 rolled off the line of Boeing 1956, 1957 models. The last year of production was actually 65, 66. And these old girls have just been flying like nobody's business. We can carry up to about 200,000 pounds of fuel. And we have gas all over. Where normally you'd have luggage, we actually have fuel. We can also carry troops, and we also do air evacuation missions where we can bring the injured home. That was one of the most inspiring missions that I've ever flown, was when we were bringing wounded back from Afghanistan. You really see the mission up front when you get to do that. And to be able to bring people home so they can be with their families that are injured, it's an amazing process.
What's your job? So you're commander. What does that mean?
So that's just sitting in the left seat and making sure the mission happens, taking care of the people. And
yeah, we gotta stop for just. You are so modest about what you do.
No, it's
That's
the
just
truth.
sitting in the left seat making sure. So I went up on one of these refueling missions, right?
Yes,
And I'm sitting there and I got to lay down in, I don't know what that area is called.
the boom pod.
The boom pod. I get
Yes.
to lay down in the boom pod and I'm watching as a fighter pulls up and this nozzle goes down and they connect midair and they fuel up a fighter while it's in
Right.
flight.
Yeah.
And you guys do it so beautifully and so effortlessly. I mean, it's an amazing thing.
It is a lot of fun. Last night I was flying a refueling mission. And, you get to fly it at night and you get to fly it during the day. And you look out and say, wow, I can't believe I get to do this.
How'd you get there?
Being stubborn, perseverance, just deciding this is what I want to do. Understanding that the word failure is not, you have to embrace failure if you really want to get where you're going. I don't mean it's okay to fail on a test because you didn't prepare for it. If you did prepare for it and you did everything you could, then it's okay. But you have to be able to say, I'm willing to take a chance. And I'm willing to fail because I believe so much in this. It's okay. I will get there. And you pick yourself up and you keep going.
Who taught you that?
My parents. And I am a direct product of my incredible, amazing parents. Also, I was a fat kid.
You?
Yes. And that was...
there's fat, and then there's PHAT fat.
No,
and then
I was
there's
not.
FAT fat.
I was FAT fat. Like,
there's chubby, and then there's fat.
okay, well, the kids in class used to call me Fat Mama Jama. Okay, and they would rhyme that Fat Mama Jama, Pama Kama. And I was a fat kid, and
How did it make you feel about yourself?
oh, well, my sister was skinny and beautiful, and she was so graceful, and everything came natural to her, and I loved my sister, and I always wanted to lift her up. I never resented her for that, but I knew in order to achieve, I had to work harder. And I had to overcome. And so being a fat kid was a blessing. And you don't realize that until later in life. But are you going to let things get in your way? Or are you going to let things make you a better, stronger person?
Did you grow up here?
I did not. So, like we were saying, I was conceived off Alcoa Highway because my mother is always quick with a story. But because my father worked for Piedmont Airlines as a commercial airline pilot, we were based in Wilmington, North Carolina. So we moved from Knoxville to Wilmington, but my dad's family's all from here. So I grew up coming home to Knoxville.
So you grew up in North Carolina?
I did, just on the coast of North Carolina.
Where for college?
Appalachian State. And I was at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill for a little bit too. But that's kind of, I think, indicative of who I am. I started out at App State because I got turned down from Chapel Hill. My heart was set on going to Chapel Hill, but I got rejected. And so I went to App, and then I said, well, they're going to take me at some point. So I reapplied, and I transferred after my sophomore year after being accepted. And then I was at Chapel Hill, and I thought, this just isn't for me, because it felt like people worried more about who they were and what grades they were making and who they were connected to. And I just wanted App, where I could walk across campus, see a professor, and he's like, Ashley, I could tell you stayed up late last night on that paper. It wasn't quite as good as, you can do. And I just wanted the quality of the education and to have that connection with people, not worry about what they could do for me.
After you graduated, what did you do?
I wandered a little bit. I actually moved to Germany. And because I would study in Germany during the summers, my minor was German language, and one of my degrees was history, concentrating in modern Germany. And so I would spend the summer studying in Germany, and a friend of mine, who's still a dear friend, decided after graduation, well, let's go back to Germany. And so we did, and we stayed there for a while. I was a nanny, worked for Armed Forces Network as a radio host.
See, I told you.
And then I came home, and I really felt lost, but then I found flying again. And so that's when I got back into flying, working on my private pilot's license. I'd have 3 different jobs just trying to pay for my flying lessons. And so it was hard. And then an opportunity actually came up where a pilot for United Airlines said, hey, Ashley, United's hiring flight attendants. You should come and apply. And I talked to my dad, and I said, Dad, I don't want to be a flight attendant. I want to be a pilot. And he said, for the first time, he really gave me advice and said, Ashley, take that job. Every day you're off, fly. Work on your flying hours. You have health insurance. You have a regular income. Get to know every pilot you fly with. See if they're in a National Guard unit. And then ask them to join that National Guard unit. Take a pilot slot. I don't care if it's Timbuktu. You take that pilot slot. If you want to fly, you'll make it happen. And so that's exactly what I did. And it worked out just like my dad said. So the one time he gives advice, he's got a, perfect average now for giving advice.
Let's get a break. We'll come back with more with Ashley. It's anything is
Thank
possible.
Coming up,
I actually felt him pass. I know when his soul left me. I never lost him. He was with me and then he was with God.
Did you want to be like your dad when you were growing up?
I think so. I mean, my dad wasn't around a lot when I was little, but I didn't know that because my mom was such an incredible mom.
Right.
My dad was doing military service and also a full-time airline pilot, so he was gone a lot. But then when I went into my high school years, my dad was always around. My mom and dad never missed a soccer game. They never missed a track meet. They never missed a game that I was cheering for. I mean, they were always there. I always admired my father for his intellect, and he's an extremely smart man, very well read. He's always helped me see both sides of the story. So I'm more conservative. Well, my dad is actually a liberal.
Wow.
And so we have awesome discussions, watching the news. At night, we'd always have dinner during the national news. Tom Brokaw, not so small of a secret, was my first big crush.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Whenever other people had Duran Duran, Tom Brokaw was my big crush. And so we would always discuss the news over dinner. And I've always admired my father, and I still do. But I don't know if I wanted to be just like him. I wanted to be me.
Which brings us to an interesting turn in your life. So, obviously, you got married.
It did.
Right?
Yes.
And you have children. How many children?
Well, I've birthed 5 children, but I have 4 living children.
Wow. You said you birthed 5, you have 4. What happened?
Well, our 3rd child, Gabriel, was a preterm birth, and my body just couldn't carry him. And as hard of an event as that was, I mean, it was very life-changing for my husband and I, because I thought you just got pregnant and you had a baby if you did everything right. But my body failed me, and it was an extremely hard time, but I knew I was in God's hands the entire time. And I know that's weird to say, but I felt him with me. And my husband was out of town at the time. I was actually up in Bristol and went to the ER, and the doctor was a resident, bless his heart, and he said basically, well, take 2 aspirin and call your OB in the morning. And I called my husband. He's like, what?
Her husband is a surgeon, by the way.
Yes, yeah. He's one of the trauma surgeons at the University of Tennessee. And he said, you need to go to UT right now. So I drove to UT against my husband's wishes. He wanted my mother to drive me, but my mother drove the kids. And from the time I got to the hospital, I really felt like I was in God's hands. And Todd met me at the hospital later that evening. And so he never left my side. And those are times, definitive times in marriage where you know you will make it through anything. I remember the obstetrician, a wonderful man, Dr. Hennessy, told Todd, it's okay. You can sleep in my office tonight. We'll get you a bed here in a call room. And Todd said, I'm not leaving. And Dr. Hennessy looked at him, and Todd gave him a very stern look and said, I'm not leaving her. And he pulled a mat off a gurney and slept on the floor right beside me. And I knew he would never leave me after that. And I gave birth to Gabriel, and we never find out if it's a boy or a girl before we have him. We figure we just want a healthy baby, and so we're surprised. That's the last great surprise, knowing what gender your child is to me. And so when Gabriel was born, I actually felt him pass. I know when his soul left me. I never lost him. I always knew where he was. He was with me, and then he was with God. And the whole time, my husband was right beside me. And you have to allow God to help you through instances like that. When you find you're at the bottom and you feel like all is lost, if you listen, God will help you, and He will be that voice that picks you up. And one of those voices He sent to me was my husband. And
To say the very words that God was saying to you at that time, I will never leave you.
I will never leave you. Yeah. And that's a lot coming from, I met him in a bar on a layover when I was working for United Airlines. I had 17 hours in Columbus, Ohio, and I met him that night. And we've been together ever since. Those are the kind of people you meet in a bar sometimes. But I have been truly blessed to have a partner in life, and that is my husband.
Gabriel.
Yes.
You named the baby.
Yes.
When did you name the baby, and why Gabriel?
We decided when I was in labor, we would have if it was a girl, her name would be Hope. And if it was a boy, his name would be Gabriel. Because no matter what, they were blessings, and they were little angels, and that they would always be with us, whether it was a boy or a girl.
Why don't we take a break? When we come back, part 2 of our conversation with Ashley Nickloes. This is Anything is Possible.